And welcome back to Nerdish to the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Raffi here, joined by Davian. Davian, on this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast, the warmers on the sideline are doing their work right now because I don't know about you, but I'm cold right now, and I'm inside right now. It is extremely cold right now. I believe your location also is getting the worst of it as well, but it was negative 40 yesterday, so we have the heaters going on the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. We're sitting on the bench having this podcast, but you know what? The blowers are doing a lot of work right now because, Davian, the benches are frigid and very cold right now. Davian, we got to talk about the NFL. NFC, AFC Championship games are going to be played tomorrow. We're recording this on Saturday. But overall, I think now is a good time just to look overall at the NFL season. But before we do that, as always, Davian, outside of being cold, how are you?
Look, I'm doing great. The Patriots are playing tomorrow. Well, by the time you're watching this video to the viewer, you already know the results of that game. Hopefully the Patriots heading to the Super Bowl. If not, I'll be greatly disappointed that we somehow lost to Jarrett Stidham. But with that, all that being said, I've been great. The Rangers haven't been great. The Knicks haven't been great. But the Patriots are great. And that's the only thing I can, be happy about. I'm repping the Pats. I got Chris Hogan autographed jersey back there. I'm riding high with the Pats today and tomorrow and till the day I die. Because for Drake May, I would do anything. With that being said, though, Raffi, we're seeing the collapse of the MLB slowly. We're probably not going to have an MLB season next year with the lockout. I know this is going to be a separate podcast topic, but I see you're wearing the Cubs hoodie. So how have you been, though?
I'm doing great. As you can tell, I got my tan on a little bit before being beamed by the
Yeah,
terrible weather of Chicago, Illinois. But it's funny because when I was on vacation, I was at a place where I had no signal. I had no clue what was going on. I was very out of the loop. And I had a quick Wi-Fi hotspot of 5 minutes where I was able to just look through my phone, catch up on all my loyal Instagram reel senders, and make sure that I'm grading all their Instagram reels, all that stuff, as one would do. One of my friends had sent to me Alex Bregman to Chicago. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that was insane to see that had happened. And I'm absolutely floored about it. That's finally the Cubs are using that massive amount of money they have and the massive organization that they have to finally go out and get someone. Obviously use Kyle Tucker. That's a little unfortunate, but I'll take Alex Bregman all day, man. And then, yes, you mentioned the MLB and their situation. Kyle Tucker, where did he go, Davian?
I don't know. Where did he go, Raffi? Definitely
I think
not
to a small
LA,
market
right?
team.
He wouldn't go to the Dodgers, right? That wouldn't, they wouldn't break the matrix by getting Kyle Tucker, but
Absolutely not.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be bad. I think we will get into this in another podcast, but I really think there's gonna be a lockdown. I don't see how the owners are gonna reach a settlement with the players because the players
100%.
Players are gonna refuse a salary cap at all costs, and I don't blame the players, but it's impossible to play in a league where you have one team that's able to buy out all these players and other teams are just not able to. Well, they can, but the owners are just too cheap. But
yeah, and the players just keep requesting more money, except for Jose Ramirez of the Guardians, who is taking a 7-year, $175 million deal, which is that's fantastic for both sides. Some people are like, "Oh, your agent should be fired." This, that. He just loves Cleveland, which I think might be the first person to ever openly admit that they love Cleveland. So that says a lot. That says a lot if someone's willing to say that I love Cleveland. Yeah. Speaking of Cleveland, let's get into the NFL. Let's do our synopsis right now. So we'll dive right into it. David, I'll hand it over to you first. We can go either teams that exceeded expectations, underachieved expectations, just in general, Davian. Where do you want to start? What teams do you want to look at? And then
let's go with teams that exceeded expectations. And you know what? I'll kick it off too. The Seattle Seahawks, Raffi, were a shocker this year. I mean, the way that defense was put together and the way that the JSN and that entire offense led by Sam Darnold has been playing this year has been phenomenal. And this is all without a very good run game in the backfield at all. Like, it's mediocre at best. So the fact that they have all those, they're playing so well at this caliber, one, I think it just proves that Sam Darnold is not a fluke. His season with the Vikings was not just because he's a system quarterback. It's just because he's able to play well in a system. So maybe he is a system quarterback, but he's pretty darn good at it, And that's the thing. And Raffi, I'll echo the words of our old podcast buddy Theodore that you don't need to pay QBs this an exorbitant amount of money. If you build a system where a QB can play well, and any QB can play well, and I feel like that's what Seattle has built now. I feel like you could put anybody into that system and they'd succeed. And so I'm very impressed with what Seattle has done. Their young guys look great. The future's looking very bright for them, is in my opinion. But Raffi, what do you think about that?
They've taken an absolute step from last year where they did show some flashes, and then obviously Geno Smith being replaced by Sam Darnold. I'll talk about Geno Smith in a little bit, unless you have a similar team that you want to talk about at some point. But they went from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, which if you told someone that 5 years ago, they'd be like, wow, you're really going through things. But no, as you said, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Sam Darnold was an absolute perfect fit in Seattle and really unlocked Jason's game. I do want to disagree with you. This is Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Mr. Steals all Kenneth Walker's touchdown slander. I think they're a very solid running back duo. I just think they're
a great duo, but they're not elite. Like they're not like what we saw on the lines before. You know, it's not like that.
100%. But it's hard to be better than the Lions running back duo.
Yeah, that's true.
The point is, it's still a solid running back duo. Obviously, the big thing is Kenneth Walker being healthy, and it feels like I don't really know where Kenneth Walker is with Seattle because some games you saw last week for the 49ers in the divisional round, he got the ball a ton, got 3 touchdowns. Part of this was Charbonnet did get hurt. But I don't know why the Seahawks don't feel the need to rely on him and lean on him a little bit more. I'd like to see them be a little bit more reliant. You have Charles Cross, who's been absolutely fantastic this year, got extended recently by the Seattle Seahawks. So the offensive lines look good. Zabel's been a solid draft pick as well. I believe they took him mid-first round 2-3 years ago. So he's been a solid offensive lineman as well. And the defense has taken a massive step from last year too, and you're really seeing McDonald put his imprint on this team, going from a solid first year last year where I believe they either made the playoffs or just missed out. I shouldn't be forgetting this. This was 1 year ago, to a team that is the best team in the NFC record-wise and obviously one of the top teams in the NFC overall. So absolutely agree with the Seahawks.
Yeah. So, Raffi, we went through one winner. Do you want to go with another winner, or do you want to start talking about the losers? Because there's a whole lot of losers, I really think.
Let's keep things positive for a little bit. And you know what? I got to be the person who says this. I got to be the person as a Chicagoan, even though, Davian, we all know that you are more of the Chicagoan when it comes to the Bears than I am. But the Bears, we got to talk about the Bears. The Bears went from a 5-12 team last year all the way to an 11-6 team this year. And it felt like last year, anything that could go wrong and they grasped defeat from the jaws of victory constantly. They found ways to lose. This year, the table's completely flipped for them. They found ways to win almost every game. Obviously, they lost to the Rams last week, but that was a game where it looked like they were out of it, and then Caleb Williams makes a crazy throw, and all of a sudden, you're going into overtime in the first place, which was absolutely insane. So the Bears, their whole transformation from last year to this year, I don't think that the Bears are a team that's as good as they were this past season, but I don't think they are as bad as they were last year. I think they're somewhere closer to that 10-win range, which is one less than this year, but still. Ben Johnson worked miracles on the city and worked miracles for this Bears team. And the offense got better as the season went on. Monangai got more involved. He's looked really well, looked really solid, and looks like a really solid duo with DeAndre Swift. Neither are anything crazy, but still a solid running back duo. Caleb Williams looks like he can be a guy. Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, who I feel like week in and week out I've been mentioning this, but finally got more involved as the season went on. And Colston Loveland especially looked really good down the stretch and was a big factor in that game versus the Rams and was a big factor in the game versus the Packers in the playoffs until obviously got knocked out at the end of the fourth quarter due to a concussion. So I think that this offense is only going to keep getting better. The real thing for the Bears at the end of the day, if they want to sustain this success from this past season, is going to be beefing up the defense, especially pass rush. I know a lot of people look at Max Crosby. If things do turn out to where he winds up potentially getting traded, you would have to imagine the Bears are going to be all over that, looking to upgrade their pass rush. But outside of that, the defense is the one thing that I'd like to see them improve upon, but this has been a massive step for the Bears this year, and they did much better than I had expected. I had them more in the 8-9 win range, and the way that they looked in their wins was something that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, Raffi, I think beyond that, I think the biggest thing for the Bears is that Caleb Williams I feel like, really found his own finally. You know, I really do like the way that he's been playing. I think it's, I think Caleb Williams has been playing great. I think that his wide receiver core is not the best in the league, but he made do with it. And yeah, you know what? I think they only ranked 12th in passing yards amongst all teams. So it wasn't something spectacular, but Caleb Williams came to play when he needed it the most, when the team needed it the most, especially close to the end of the season with all those comeback drives. I mean, he's the Iceman for a reason. He deserves that nickname in many ways. And I would love to see him continue to find his own, but you need to, just like you said, that defensive line and the defense needs to be upgraded. You have to make sure that offensive line stays well too. And I think also, potentially coach Caleb Williams once he gets more comfortable with an offensive line that he understands can protect him well, he can stay in the pocket more, which will just further elevate the game and further elevate the passing game for the Bears.
100%. His decision-making is still a concern for me. Obviously,
it is, yeah.
He does a lot of great things, and he does get bailed. He's able to, and I don't want to sound like Chris Collinsworth here, but he's able to do some of those things that Patrick Mahomes can do, where he can make things happen out of nothing. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, it's improviser QB in him that he's able to make some of those plays that you're just like, how?
But sometimes you over-improvise, like it's not necessary.
Exactly.
And Mahomes had that when he was young too.
Exactly, and that's something that I'd like to see continue to work on. And this is the first year that he's with Ben Johnson, so there's hope and optimism that he's able to continue to take steps, especially this offseason. But that is one thing that I'd like to see, where if you're in a 2nd and 3 situation, don't feel the need to just run around. If you don't like what you have, just live for the next down, throw the ball out of bounds, take it easy, do the check down. You don't need to throw a 70-yard touchdown every single time or run around and make a miracle throw every single time. We saw that a lot with USC. It's what got him to be the first overall pick, what got him to the Bears, and what's gotten him to this point. But there's times and places to use it, and I think that's going to be the main thing. Where we see with all young players in all sports, where you see decisions that get made, and you're like, why in the world would they make that decision? But you got to coach the college out of them a little bit, and I think Caleb still has a little college left in him that needs to be coached out of him going forward. But Davian, let's move on. Let's start with the team. Let's move over to the teams that underachieved. What's a team that you felt that underachieved this year?
I know that people didn't expect a lot from them, but I do need to mention the Raiders. I think
that was a team that was on my list. That's what I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, I know you were alluding to that earlier. I do want to chime in on this just because it seemed like what they put together was pretty solid. Like, they had a good defense on paper. Their offense, like, Geno Smith, like, sure, he's not the best, but he had his former coach and Pete Carroll there, and I feel like Pete Carroll's game style, play style is just too old for the league at this point. And I'm in some ways, like, I was surprised when they fired him, but I also understand it now. Just because now they're able to bring in Fernando Mendoza, all right? There's no question about that. Mendoza clearly showed in the national championship game why he's going to be the number 1 pick overall. But at the same time, Mendoza's not a finished product if he doesn't have an offensive line. And that offensive line stunk. Ashton Jeanty was the only highlight of this year, and he didn't even play great. Like, critics are saying, like, Ashton Jeanty played terrible. Like, no, he had over 1,000 yards rushing with that offensive line. That is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And so I do give kudos to him there, but the thing is, Raffi, when I look at this Raiders team, I don't see any, like, besides Jeanty, I don't see any bright spots. You're bringing in a new QB, but do you really have the wide receiver core? Not really.
You trade Jacoby Myers.
Well, Jacoby Myers, but, like, come on. Is that really going to be the number 1 wide receiver?
Oh, no, but again, it's solid number 2, but yes,
obviously. Solid number 2, but the thing is that, like, Mendoza has played with worse. He hasn't played with some amazing wide receivers as time at IU. Well, there has been some, but, like, nothing like, wow, like Ryan Williams or something like that. But at the same time, I really think that they have a lot of things to work on, and I was very unimpressed with this season. I didn't see any bright spots. I didn't see them getting better in any ways. I think it was just downhill from the start to the finish.
Yeah,
well,
and
except when they beat the Patriots, but yeah.
And this is hard too, because you look at them, and I didn't have neither of us had massive expectations. I think I was a little more on the lighter side than you were. I think you were a little bit more harsher, if I recall our podcast months ago.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And I didn't have this team as a playoff team, but I was like, you know what? I can see how this team can make some noise and put up a fight. And, I mean, they did put up a fight versus the Patriots, who are now a win away from the Super Bowl. So I guess there's that. But outside of that, really, they just did not look good. They looked very outclassed. Pete Carroll got outcoached in a lot of games, which was very unorthodox. And, again, I agree. It makes sense why things just didn't work out and why he's no longer the coach of the Raiders. But this is a team, again, going back to my point, that I had as a team that I thought could make some noise, and I didn't expect them to go 10 wins, 11 wins, make the playoffs even, but I had them as a team that could win 7 or 8 games. I thought that was realistic with their schedule, so it was very shocking to me how poorly things went. We knew the offensive line concerns, we knew some of the defensive holes, but still, this team was way worse than we all expected, and we did not expect this team to be...
The defense was middle of the pack, but I thought the defense would be better because they're being led by a guy like Pete Carroll.
And I think the fall-off of Geno Smith also needs to just...
I mean, that was just really awful play from him. I mean, don't get me wrong, he also had a terrible offensive line, so it's impossible to play in those conditions, but at the end of the day, like it was bad. There's nothing good. There's really nothing good.
100%. Speaking of other Pirate teams that underachieved, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a team that had a very easy path, I felt like, going into this year to winning the NFC South. Went 6-2 to start the year. Baker Mayfield, you can find the podcast where I said Baker Mayfield is currently an MVP candidate, which was true at the time.
Raffi, you and I were talking, like, I don't know if I ever mentioned on the podcast, but I remember, like, I remember telling you before, like, I really thought this Buccaneers team was a Super Bowl contender. I remember, like, I had friends I had some friends, like, they don't know anything about football. From time to time, they ask me, like, hey, Davian, like, what's going on? Like, who do you think is going to go to the Super Bowl? I'm like, the Buccaneers. Like, they look amazing. And they just disappeared as the season went on.
They somehow out-falconed the Falcons with just an utter collapse where they lost a lot of one-score games. They shot themselves in the foot a bunch. They lost first the Panthers. They lost first the Saints. These are games that you expect the Buccaneers to win. I'm really surprised that Todd Bowles did not get fired. With all the coaches, with the record amount of coaches that got fired, I am surprised that he was not fired because this was... For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I guess you can squint and say, you know what, we're bringing back most of the team next year. Yes, things really fell apart, but we were really good to start the year. But, man, this was a team that had a lot going for them and had a pretty open... The Falcons, if you had told me they went 8-9 this year, I wouldn't be shocked. I would have guessed maybe 8-9, 9-8, so that's nothing surprising to me. But the Buccaneers, outside the Falcons, the Buccaneers were clearly the number one team and likely winner of the NFC South. So the fact that they lost the division not only to the Panthers, but a Panthers team that went 8-9, that really disappointing year. I have to imagine they'll be better next year, but that was really surprising to me. It felt like when they got healthier, when Mike Evans got back, it felt like Emeka Ibuka took a step back. It felt like the offense as a whole took a step back, and the defense was very leaky at the wrong times, and it was just very surprising to see.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, they just hired Zach Robinson, which Raffi, I mean, as a Falcons fan, former offensive coordinator. I don't know, like, I really don't think that's a great hire at the end of the day. Yes, like, the Falcons offense did play well in many ways. I mean, carried by Bijan Robinson, but this coaching carousel that often, like, in terms, I believe there's, like, a massive coaching carousel that Baker Mayfield has been going through, and it's very hard as a QB to continuously have to develop into different play styles. And so with this new coaching staff, they have to really work around Baker Mayfield rather than against him. He's a great QB. Let him ball.
Yeah, Zach Robinson being let go after a year should tell you very well how the Falcons view their offense this past year. Because Bijan was great, and Bijan's always going to be great. That's a give me. It's like having Josh Allen on your team and being like, oh, well, now, like, the offensive coordinator is great. Look at the offense. It's like, yes, because you have Josh Allen. Bijan Robinson is going to do well. If you can somehow manage for Bijan Robinson to have a disappointing season without getting hurt, then that is very impressive. That's more impressive than getting him to over 2,000 yard all-purpose yards. But the offense was just very up and down. Obviously, you had some injuries with Penix getting hurt, but still, it was just very on and off. The decision-making of the offense made no sense at some points in time. So the fact that he was ousted immediately and the fact that now the Buccaneers are like, oh, let's take him in, I don't understand that at all. But, Davian, let's move over to do you have another team that exceeded expectations, under-exceeded expectations, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, under-exceeded expectations were the Buffalo Bills, Raffi. I mean, you just mentioned Josh Allen and co. And I really don't see this Bills... I think this Bills team is going to fall apart. I don't know if you saw that press conference on Wednesday, Raffi, but that was ridiculous.
Slandering your second round pick while he's
like,
on the team still is
what?
wild. That
What?
was insane.
It was bizarre to me, and like you saw just recently, we had I think last night, Mike McDaniel canceled his interview with the Bills for the head coaching spot. A lot of the expectations that Mike McDaniel will become the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. But
we talked about this off on the side, but I like that hire a lot.
Right, I like that hire.
I think we both agreed with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think so too. The thing is though, it's like, how are you like you're being given the opportunity to have Josh Allen as your QB as a head coach, and you're somehow turning that away? There has to be some wild reason you're not, and I can point to it. It's the front office that's terrible, and the fact that Bean got pardon my French. The fact that Bean got promoted is ridiculous and bizarre to me. As a Patriots fan, I'm happy because the Bills are going to be more dysfunctional than they usually have been. But they're moving into a brand new stadium, and while the lights might be bright, the future might not be so much for the Bills.
This team is a team that clearly, as you've mentioned, where the front office just got in the way of their success. Because, again, just calling back to, and I apologize, Davian, I typically remember your takes when they're really bad. I seem to forget when you have good takes on other points that you mentioned. But I remember back on our NFL predictions podcast before the season started, I recall talking about the Bills and saying, this is your year if you're the Buffalo Bills. We did not expect, and Davian, I know you had the Patriots I do remember something really positive. You had the Patriots with a really good record. I kind of scuffed at it originally. That was a really good take, obviously, and obviously Drake May being great helped. Mike Vrabel did a lot of work, but also having a really easy schedule with a lot of cupcakes also helped too. But you gotta be who's on your schedule. So, anyways, outside the Patriots, we didn't expect the Patriots. A lot of people did not expect the Patriots to be as good as they were this year. But a lot of people said, you know what, the Chiefs are kind of regressing a little bit. The Ravens' defense is horrid. The Bengals' defense is horrid. And it feels like the Bengals are just in a whole different situation. If there's any year for the Bills to win the AFC and go to the Super Bowl, it was this year. It really was this year. And obviously you can't predict the future. You didn't know that the Patriots were going to be this good. You didn't know that some other teams like the Chargers and Broncos were going to be really solid too. But still, if the Bills essentially just sat on their hands all of last offseason. They didn't address any needs. They didn't help with bolster the wide receiving core. They didn't help bolster the defense. And even when the trade deadline came around, you saw the Jaguars trade a third and a sixth for Jacoby Myers, or a fourth and a sixth. The Bills couldn't give up a fourth and a sixth rounder for Jacoby Myers, who was fantastic for the Jaguars down the stretch in the back half of the season. You weren't willing to part ways with that. The Bills just continues. It's so frustrating, and it's hard to gather my thoughts and words right now because it felt like this year was really going to be the year for the Bills, where there wasn't a lot of competition, and they just proceeded to shoot themselves in the foot. And you only get so many chances and so many cracks at things. Just look at the Bengals. 2021, they go to the Super Bowl. Oh, this team has high upside. They're certainly going to be back again in the future, in the next couple of years. Joe Burrow looks great, etc. Joe Burrow still looks great, but this Bengals team has not. I mean, obviously they made it to the divisional round, but they haven't gotten to that level again. They haven't made it that far yet. And you're looking at the Bills. The Bills haven't even gotten to that point yet. And I agree. A lot needs to be done this offseason for this Bills team to get back into the contending category and be one of the top teams. And Josh Allen, being Josh Allen, is not enough. You need to help him more. And I completely agree. This was a team that I'm very disappointed in.
Yeah, I agree, Raffi. I'm very disappointed in this team as well. I think that, yeah, I mean, I could go into another rant about this team, but I'm
sure we'll have time during the offseason because I'm sure they'll make some other dumb decision that we're going to be bringing down. But let's move over to a team that did exceed expectations, and this is a team that didn't do too much to exceed expectations because the expectations were already pretty much on the floor. But the New Orleans Saints, I just want to I know it's weird because it's coming from a Falcons fan, but I actually do have a soft spot for the Saints as a Chicagoan because I grew up loving Drew Brees, and I still love Drew Brees. The Saints went from a team that I think a lot of people expected to be in the 2 to 3 win range, just absolutely at the bottom, competing for the number 1 overall pick. And they went 6-11 this year. And I know you're like, Raffi, 6-11, that's absolutely horrid. Why would you be saying that this is a team that exceeded expectations? But again, a lot of people expected this team, including myself, to win only 2 to 3 games, and they won 4 of their last 5 games to end the season. And obviously some of those teams that they played against weren't great, but you played the Bucks, you played the Panthers, 2 teams that are fighting for the division, and you beat both of them. And Tyler Shuck looks like he could be a guy. Now, albeit he's 25, 26 years old, so how many years of really solid play and what's the ceiling going to be? But he showed a lot of promise, and a lot of their rookies from this past draft class looked the part. Calvin Banks looks like he can be a really solid offensive lineman in this league. And for this Saints team where everything seemed terrible and everything was going to be awful this year, and it was just going to be another just brutal year in the slums, I thought there was a lot of bright spots on this team and throughout this season, and I think Kellen Moore's done a really good job with the Saints team. So I don't know if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender next year, but I think that this team is going to be probably around the 6 to 8 win range next year, and that's honestly very good for the Saints, which were expected to go through a long rebuild where they're collectively likely only going to win like 7 games over 2 seasons between this year and next year.
No, Ralph, I was also very impressed by their defense. Their defense played very well throughout especially close to the end of the season. They kept them in games, and Tyler Shuck, wasn't amazing, but he played very solid. Other teams I do want to mention, honorable mention, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course. I mean, that turnaround. I
have them on my list too.
Great.
Yeah.
And the New York Giants, honestly, as well. I mean, yes, they did fire Dable. But the future looks very bright for them. And of course, I'm not saying that they were impressive. People thought they would do better, but given what they had with Jackson Dart getting injured, Cam Scatterbo getting injured, and other players on the team getting injured, I was very impressed. I'm very excited for what they have coming on. But that's why I honorable mention. I do need to mention the New England Patriots, not because I didn't expect them to do well, but because of the turnaround of the culture within the team. Raffi, if you remember last year at this time, Gerard Mayo had lost the culture. He'd lost
Davian, I remember that very well because you gave a great rant about that. That was a 4-minute period where I had my fingers crossed and I had them in my lap, and I was just like, I'm gonna mute my mic and just let Davian just talk for 4 minutes.
Yeah. And so, what Mike Vrabel has brought in has been amazing. And more importantly, what you've seen from Drake May, I'm not going to glaze Drake May, but I will in some ways, is the leadership and how he's really taken up that step up. And the leadership that a player that you didn't really expect to be that type of a leader, but Stephon Diggs has taken as well for this offense. I think it goes to show that this Patriot way is not old. It still works. It just needs to evolve with the gameplay as well. And I think that the gameplay, especially this defense, Raffi, is amazing. I mean, I watch this defense and I'm very I'm wildly impressed with the game schemes that they run. It's not it's not standard. They confuse the QBs. They rush 3. They back up. It's not like the Texans defense, which shout out to the Texans as well. I feel like there's a lot of teams I want to give a shout out to, but I mean the Texans defense just bomb rush the QB, and you'll probably get to him with Will Anderson or Daniel Hunter. While the Patriots defense is more elusive, it has a great secondary. So I'm not gonna go on for too long, but those are the other 3 teams I wanted to mention that I thought looked very impressive this year.
Yeah, and obviously you have the teams where injuries really hampered them. The Bengals and the Ravens were 2 disappointing teams, but then again,
But you can't really bring that up.
Hurt. Yeah. Joe Burrow was hurt. Yes, we can have a whole discussion about the Bengals at another time on how they really this was a chance. They're really their last opportunity, and they just completely closed their window. But that's a conversation for another day. But those were teams where injuries really wound up hampering them. Commanders and our team that was really disappointing after a lot of people had them doing really well after a really solid year last year where they made that NFC Championship game. But again, Jane Daniels being hurt for most of the year, and even when he was back, you could tell that he was dealing with some injuries. The Chiefs, I want to have this tabled as a future conversation, but David, I'll just at least let you have the thought in your mind. So when I ask you this in a few weeks when we're into the off season for the NFL, what your thoughts are. You know that I at least prompted the question earlier a few weeks ago, and I think it might be time to have a conversation about the Kansas City Chiefs and if they are a playoff, if they're still a contender in the AFC. I think that's a very valid conversation. Now, unfortunately, as I see the clock ticking right to 30 minutes, we don't have time for this conversation. This is a conversation that I'd like to spend more than 5 minutes at the end of a podcast on. But I do think that it's a worthy conversation because even before Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL, this team did not look great. They had a lot of up and downs. They didn't look like the Chiefs of the past. Travis Kelce showing signs of regression. Pacheco and the whole run game really just fell off this year. And the defense was really struggling too. You thought Rice coming back was really going to bolster the offense. The team was going to get going. They're 5-3. They got it. And it just did not happen. The team really fell apart. So that is a conversation for another day because I want to spend a lot more time on it. But I do think that's something that I at least wanted to bring up now, as even before Patrick Mahomes got injured and put the nail in the coffin, they were already pretty much in the coffin at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation to have. I think it's very hard to evaluate that until Patrick Mahomes comes back. But I think you'll have to be watching the Chiefs with a microscope next year to really see those bright spots. Are they there? Are they bringing in young players? Because the team is getting old. You know, like the team that won the Super Bowl, a few years back is not the same team that you still have today.
There's a very realistic possibility that Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are not starting Week 1 for the Chiefs next year. That's a very realistic possibility.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, with Mahomes, like I doubt it. I don't think he'll get back that soon. But yeah,
and Travis Kelce might retire. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, when everything starts happening, once we're in the offseason, we'll have this discussion. More discussions about other teams too. The Bills, you better bet. I'm sure we'll have a discussion about the Ravens and our yearly conversation about the Bengals as well. A lot of AFC teams that will be discussed over the course of the offseason. So we'll get into that, but as always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel as well. Let us know what teams really impressed you this year, which teams you felt like really failed to meet your expectations. Let us know in the comments below, and as always, as mentioned, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one. For Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed, and yeah, have a good one. See ya.
Peace.